Good morning and welcome to the Elevate Renatus team call. This is Keely Austin, your host. It is Takeoff Tuesday. I'm so excited to be here. We have 54 participants on the line. Make sure that you reach out to your team. No ICMs left behind. Our trainer today is someone who I really look up to, and I've had the privilege of getting to know this individual for the last three and a half years. And as I've gotten to know Bill, I just wanted to acknowledge some of the things that I really noticed about him and some things that I really appreciate about him. His passion behind this business really shows when you see him speak, and also just with his results. He is seeing a lot of great results, and it's because of the action that he takes and the passion behind this business and the passion that he has behind helping other people. You can see his passion whenever he speaks. You can feel it and you can hear it. He's very enthusiastic, so he's someone that I certainly want to spend more time around because I am looking to become more enthusiastic myself. He is absolutely a product of the product. Bill is so funny. Every time I see him speak, he definitely has my cheeks hurting. So funny. He's a very genuine person. He takes massive action, like I said before, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but you've been in this business for around 10 years, so he really has a lot of experience to share with us. So we're very privileged to hear from Bill. Just a little bit about his background. Before Renatus, he was a pro skier for 10 years in Vail, Colorado, and he realized he wasn't really qualified to do much else. He got into the franchise business, and due to lack of knowledge, that ended up costing him the business, and he lost everything. In 2007, he heard about real estate investing. He did not have education and tried to do this on his own. He ended up being upside down and over $400,000 in debt during the 2008 crash. Then he found Renatus, and the year before Renatus, he was working as a loan officer and a realtor, I believe, and so the following year when he found Renatus, he ended up making 8 times more in his first year with this company than the previous year as a loan officer. Ever since then, Bill has completed over 130 deals. He's grossed multiple 7 figures in real estate. He's a marketing leader and a PIT team member. We're very fortunate to have him as our trainer today, and I'm excited to see what he has to share with us. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Keely. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. Well, I've been battling this cold, and I don't know why it's just hanging around, but actually I did sleep in a little bit extra today, and but boy, last night I was really in a lot of pain. So I'm good. I'm okay.
Sorry to hear that. Feel better, and thank you for being here with us this morning.
Absolutely. Thanks for hosting as always. Thanks for taking the controls and making these calls happen. I know for me, I'm grateful because not only now that I'm training on the calls, but for a couple of years, we've been doing these calls, and God, I don't know how long now, maybe it could be going on 3 or 4 years that we've been doing these calls. I used to listen to them every day. So I am grateful that you take the time out of your day to host these calls and to be a part of this, to make it happen. So thank you so much for all you do for our community and all your success as well. And I'll just love working with you. It's awesome. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. So, all right, we're going to kick this off. Let's see. Last week, I spent some time talking about the follow-up. And so I'm going to dive into that a little bit, I believe. A little bit of the how-to action that we need to take. I'm debating on whether I need to share my screen and draw it. I know a lot of Michael and Dane do a lot of drawing, so sometimes I feel bad that I don't handwrite more stuff. But I think if I use my laptop, it would be more conducive to that. But feel free to text your team, let your folks know that we got this call kicked off. We're at 58, 59 people, so a little light this morning, but no worries. I'm glad you guys are here. Welcome. So I will say this to you. I always do this. 760-533-3141. I just typed that in the chat, 760-533-3141. That's my cell phone number that I'm constantly on, which is crazy, but it's how I make a living. You guys are welcome to reach out to me for anything that you're working on, struggling with, looking forward to dealing with, whatever it might be, and hopefully we can do something about it together. So if you have anything that's, I don't know, pertinent to whatever it is that you're doing in your business with regards to Renatus marketing, and tying in the real estate with that, if you want to share that, if you want to talk about that or have a question about that, or some clarification or anything, or my opinion, or my advice, then feel free to type that in the chat or come off of mute and ask that question, no matter what. It doesn't, even if it doesn't pertain to our training today, you're more than welcome to steer me in the direction that you want to go when it comes to what these trainings are about, because they're definitely about you guys. Sometimes we have some points that we believe are valid and are important to get across, and so we'll have specific things we want to share. I know Michael does that quite a bit when it comes to announcements and compliance and things that we need to talk about. But of course, it's always good to have things that are most important to you guys. So discussed. So if you have anything, just feel free to shout it out. All right, let's kick it off here. Let's get started. Let's see. So let me give you an example. Yesterday, I had a follow-up. I had to do it over the phone. He's out of town. And he's a guest of a guest. He's a guest of one of my students. And so I've been working with him on funding. And, Michael started talking a little bit about funding yesterday. And it's crucial. It's absolutely crucial if you're not comfortable with the funding options, that you should watch his training on funding, or any training on funding for that matter, as much as you can, and get familiar with the multiple ways that we are able to tell stories about how people have funded their education, so that people can have an idea of what works for them. The follow-up for me is primarily about funding. Typically, there may be an objection or two. There may be a question or two, some clarification that's needed. But for the most part, people know, they understand what they're getting into. Now, one thing that they may not have is, and I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to go ahead and do video, and then I guess that's probably best so you guys can see that. And then I'll share my screen when I think of some things to write down. But one of the things that one of the main things that you'll find in a follow-up, in my opinion, in my experience, is that it may be tough because there's not enough value there. So we're at a follow-up, and they want to place the order, and they understand what Renatus is and what they're purchasing and what they're enrolling in, but they may not believe it. They may not believe that it works, or they may not believe that they're going to work in this system, even though they want to believe it. So in a follow-up, sometimes more stories and more understanding will create more belief, as well as when you hear Dane talk about projections and talk about what their year looks like a year from now, why they want to do this, and where do they want to go, and what do they want to accomplish. And he mentions, now imagine if they're accomplishing that. Imagine if you did purchase a property, or if you did enroll some students, whatever the scenario is, right? What would you do? Where would that money, where would that income, where would that position you in your life, right? So, and then you tie that back into, I'm kind of jumping around here, so I'm not necessarily going to train on how that happens unless somebody has a question and wants to know exactly what I'm getting at. What I'm doing is setting the stage. During this time of follow-up, it's important that we are constantly creating value, that we are bringing value to that individual that stems from Renatus, the community, the education, and the culture, and the opportunity. So then, as you begin to come down to the final objection, it's typically money. I mean, it's generally speaking, not that they don't want to spend it, just that they don't feel that they have it, or the resources that they do have, they don't feel are worthy. This is worthy of those funds. And so then we have to create the value as we go. And the only way really to create value, even after a follow-up, is to get them to more events and tell them more stories and share with them how they, Michael spent some good time on what you would call a path, a phase one, phase two, right? And there's steps that they're going to be taking without time restraints, given the fact that we have a lifetime education, very key, that they don't have to do this in a certain period of time. So, but there are steps, that they're going to get through. There are phases they're going to go through. And when they see themselves going through those phases, it's easier to release the funds. All right. So that's just setting the stage for the follow-up. Let's see. Debating on whether I should. I don't think. I don't think that. Well, I could share my screen. Let's see. I wasn't really thinking about doing the funding options today, but I'm just going to kind of talk about them, and then I'll see if you guys have a question. I can bring some of them up and write them down. But so I was talking to this gentleman last night, and on this follow-up call, he had already gone through 2 videos and had a one-on-one call with me, and then and I was doing a follow-up call because he went through Credit Nerds. And he actually had decent credit scores, but he did not qualify for any traditional funding for a couple of different reasons on his credit report. So my goal when through texting him was, he had said that he does not want to take out a new loan. He has a loan that he's paying off right now, which is understandable, right? You probably got that before. And because he had qualified for UGA. And of course, he didn't understand what that means. So I had to explain what UGA was. A little bit, what our funding options were, and that, and then we had to discuss a few more options as far as funding goes. And so I started to tell him a story about. I started to ask him. I do this all the time, so this will be some good information. Number one is I talk about credit, and we already knew where his credit was, and we talked about the free credit repair from Credit Nerds. So he enrolled in that. We also talk about his credit and really I had to ask him about his credit a little bit and where he was. And so those questions are sometimes not the easiest things, and we're not giving advice on it or anything like that, but it really helps us to understand what their thought process and people want to share. They want to share what happened, why, and that kind of thing. So then I asked him, I went down the steps. So let me get clear on your credit cards, and I had the information from Credit Nerds. And if you haven't ever put anybody through Credit Nerds, I recommend that you put everybody through Credit Nerds for funding. It's an amazing opportunity, you guys. They don't have to take the credit. They obviously can have a second option. They can deny the credit when they get approved, right up until the very end, right until they actually push the button. So. But it enables you in your back office you'll be able to log into your back office and see all of the people. I have hundreds and hundreds of people that have gone through Credit Nerds funding. And it shares with you all the information that you need to know about their credit report. It doesn't actually give you their credit report, but it shares it. So I was able to discuss some of his credit lines and increasing his credit lines given the market today, right? So that's a conversation, that understanding that it's possible, it's not likely, it's not going to happen. You can't make any promises, but I'm able to say, hey, listen, it looks like you have a pretty low balance on your credit card. Have you considered calling the credit card companies and asking them? And I know you guys know this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. So I mentioned that. I mentioned the market. I mentioned the way the trending, the trends are with today's financial markets, and they're very strong. And so getting lower interest rates and higher limits are easier, and they're more accommodating for that. So that was something we discussed. And then we discussed a couple of different options. I asked him if he had a 401k, and he told me, but he'd only been building on it for 1 year. The point that I'm getting to this is this. So I'm not going to go through all the funding options unless you have questions specifically on it. But we went through several, and I told some stories about how I funded, about how some of my students had funded with a 401k. And he had already written it off. He had already told me what he was going to do, that he was going to, pay down his motorcycle loan. He actually is using his credit card on his own already, just based on some of the videos that he's seen that just share the concepts of velocity banking, to apply $1,000 from his credit card over to his motorcycle loan and pay that down. And he's working extra jobs and stuff. So, but he's got a good business too. So he wants to reduce this motorcycle loan so that then he can fund the education. And he doesn't want to have 2 loans out. And so one of the things I told him, and you've heard this before, but you cannot hear this enough, is that when we went through these funding options, I mentioned how I was funded through an angel investor. The reason I go through all these funding options with people during the follow-up, and this is why it takes time. Like, this was a phone call that I had to schedule a good 45 minutes for, because we'd already done a little bit of a follow-up as well. So when I went through this, I mentioned to him, I said, did you know that it's possible that somebody may be the one who helps you fund this education? And he flat out said to me, he said, Bill, and you'll hear this, and you've probably already gotten this yourselves, is that I just don't see myself asking family members for money, or however you put it, it's just not something I need to do. And I said, it's interesting, because when you get, as you get through this education, it becomes more of an opportunity. I said, and you heard Michael talk about this even yesterday, is that the opportunity for you to borrow someone's information, to borrow someone's equity, to borrow someone's line of credit, to borrow someone's home equity in their house, to borrow someone's cash, it's not a loan anymore. It's an opportunity. You present it as an opportunity. When they can make money investing in you, I'm not going to spend a long time on this because you just talked about this yesterday, is that it no longer becomes a borrow. It no longer becomes a burden. It no longer becomes an issue. It's more of an opportunity. It's more of a chance. It's more of a investment. And it was interesting when we had this conversation with him, although it's plain as day, having the conversation with him, he started talking to me about 2 people that could fund his education. And he's a grown man. It's not, he's got a family. He's got a business on the side. He's a good dude. He's done well. He doesn't have a lot of debt. And so he said that he's like, you know what? My dad is moving into retirement, and he really needs to start putting his money to work. And this would be a great opportunity. I said, imagine if you borrowed your dad's 401k, right? Maybe your dad borrows from his own, maybe it's his equity line of credit, and those interest rates are 4 to 6%, and you can afford to pay it back at 10 or 12%, and it's worth it for you. Then you don't have to take out your own loan, right? You can have money that is available to you that you can pay back over time. And it just made he had a whole entire shift. And then we set up a plan, how he was going to get going on Credit Nerds. And then when he's done with this, he's a pilot. So he had a few things to do on some flights that he's taking. And then he had to, when he comes back, he's going to have conversation because he has a lot of downtime to talk to his father. And it was a pretty cool conversation after that, is that, so again, right from there, at the end of the conversation, at the end of the follow-up, we booked a time. I asked him when this next trip was over, because it's kind of like a 7-day on, 7-day off kind of thing. Sometimes it's 10, 12 days. They'll be booked for 2 weeks. And so his schedule. So I find out what his schedule is, when he's going to be back in a hotel room or off for the next week or two from flying jobs. And then we booked a meeting a week from now for me to follow up with him and to get on the phone with his father if his father had any questions about the investment and the opportunity for his father to invest with him, not only in his education, but in his first deals, because he's retiring. So it may or may not happen. The point was, it's a prime example of exactly what Michael was talking about yesterday, what we talked about on this call, what Dane talks about, and what you guys are doing, is that these things have to be put in action. It is not easy, but it's simple. And it's not fast, but it is a process. But if you're not engaging in the process, then it's very difficult to, it's not difficult. I hate those negative words, right? It just takes longer to really see the result that you're looking for. My suggestion is, if you struggle with the idea of funding and the idea of talking to people about funding and the idea of going through a follow-up, then I think it's very important. There was somebody that came on the phone. I can't remember if it was yesterday or last week, and they were talking about their combo and how their 5-star, they relied on their 5-star to help them close the combo. And I think that's very important when you're not 5-starred. If you're trying to go at this alone, there's no reason to. You just heard Bob say it. You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. There's a lot of incentives all the way down for a long time in the earnings plan that help create an opportunity for people that have been around a while, that are 5-star qualified, to help you, even if you are 5-star qualified. So I think with that said is if you have a hard time for whatever reason asking for help, then we've got to get past that. You got to get over that, and it's important that you take those action steps, because you'll be missing out if you're not having these conversations with folks. It's very difficult to. It's not difficult. It's going to take a lot longer for you to reach your goals and for you to change some people's lives, because we have to be able to ask them in a one-on-one setting to get started and how they're going to fund. Have you thought about how you're going to fund the education? Okay. So no thoughts or comments so far, no questions. All right. Okay, so you guys got to forgive me. I got to be honest with you. Normally, you guys, I have a lot of energy. I'm a little down. I was feeling really bad last night, and I actually was going to see if Dane could switch with me today and tomorrow. But luckily, I woke up, I slept in, I didn't walk my dog this morning, and I swear to God, you guys, I couldn't even swallow last night all night long. It felt like razor blades every time I swallowed, like I was cutting my throat. I hope that's not. And I've got to do the presentation tomorrow. I've got a slam leadership day, and I got a closing today, and I'm flying to Chicago to do the Super Saturday this Saturday. So I got to get well. So I'm a little bit off my game here today. So bear with me. So if you have any questions or thoughts, I can help you. It might help me get going. Sammy Godfrey raised her hand. Feel free to come off of mute. I think you might have to hit *6, Sammy. *6 will unmute you, I believe, on your phone, and you can come out and come off mute. Anyway, or I just unmuted you. You might be able to talk now if you have a question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I understand you're doing a Super Saturday this week, and you're going to be doing the earnings plan. Is that correct?
In Chicago, you mean?
Yeah.
No, at the Super Saturday in Chicago, I'll be training all afternoon at the Super Saturday, I believe. I'm going to talk to Scott and Nancy about that, but I don't believe I'll be doing the earnings plan at the Super Saturday, no. And they might have it set up that way, but not for, I mean, unless they're asking me to, I wasn't planning on doing the earnings plan.
Oh, okay, because they had mentioned that, and so I thought, okay, I gotta make sure that because they're gonna do it online also. So I was going to
Right. And I think Bobby Tierney does the earnings plan on Saturday, and I don't know if he does that in the morning. Yeah, they go over that in the morning, the earnings plan in the morning. It's live streaming, and Bobby T will be doing that, I believe.
All right, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Awesome. And he's amazing. Cool. Thanks for your help, Kevin and Lisa. I appreciate the information. All right, so let's step it up a notch here. Thank you, guys. Any questions, comments, thoughts you guys want to talk about? So let's see. What value can I bring? So I'm just thinking real quick. So on the follow-up, that's what we're talking about. When I get started with folks, I'll tell you, my main goal is to be in a one-on-one situation. In fact, I was going to mention this. On the pit team and the pack, we and a lot of leadership teams, we track follow-ups. We track when people are sitting one-on-one with us, because those are the times when you can place an order, you can move people to step one, which is placing that order, and step two, starting to look for the funding. You can create ideas and be very mindful and very open to the possibility of getting funded. You can create more value, and you really can build rapport with folks, right? You can really get to know them. And then it's very important that from that one-on-one, that it doesn't fizzle out, that you invite them to in the next event. If they're a student's guest, that you talk to your student and make sure that they are inviting them to the next event and figuring out which event they're going to come to. Because during this process, the more value they can receive from going to events and talking to other students and other members of the community and understanding their experience, the more likely they're going to keep the fire going. And in fact, they may even come up with better ideas to fund, hearing other people's stories. And as the value builds, they will go after the funding faster, and they will go after it with more intent. When they want something and they like something, all the intentions are there, right? And the intentions are there to get the funding. But when they desire something, and when it goes from a point of, I want this, to a point of, I have to have this no matter what, and they get that value from attending more events and from meeting more people, then they begin to find the education funding themselves. It's not all about us trying to help them find the education funding, right? So they will begin to be out there on their own, expediting the process, because sometimes the funding process can take a week to 2 weeks to a month or later or greater. All right. So the one-on-one event is crucial to really build that rapport, but it's also important that you are comfortable asking for the sale. And again, a process that and a step in the process that takes time and practice. So if you've never asked anybody for the sale, or you haven't asked many people, Michael talks about all the time, is when somebody mentions something about Renatus that they like the most, and they and he is move them along the line through some questions, and they have committed to the idea of getting started with Renatus, then he'll ask them, is there any reason why they're not ready to get started now? Now, I don't typically do that on a Thursday night. Thursday night is the first exposure for me, and I will move them to the next event, and then a follow-up, or a follow-up and then the next event. But anytime I'm at a follow-up, a second or third event, and I have an opportunity to get on the phone call with them or talk to them afterwards, I am asking them if they're ready to get started, or I should say when they're ready to get started. And, if money wasn't an object, would you be enrolling in the combo like I did? and everybody else that around here did, or would you be enrolling in something else? So we're guiding them along, leading them along the way. And if they're saying yes to those questions, which typically they're like, oh yeah, for sure, I'm definitely interested. I want to do this. Whatever the case is, then whatever their answer is, which is the questions I'm going to lead up to are going to have a yes answer. Then I'm booking that meeting. I'm booking that meeting to sit down with them or meet them at my office or get on the phone with them over the phone and or having my students meet up with them to get the order placed. I mean, that's the order of things. And it's very important that we have that ability and that practice and that conviction to ask for the order. And so one of the things that, I think that would be very important is if a lot of times I think about this, we don't do this, but if you guys think about your own process, you may even want to break it down and write it down. I don't know. But if you ever remember what it was like for your process, it's the same process that most people go through. You may want to consider reminding yourself of the questions that were asked to you. At what point did you decide you were going to enroll in the education? How did you find your funding? Maybe you're still looking for the funding. Perhaps you sat down in a one-on-one. When did they ask you for the first order? When did they ask you to place your order? How did they ask you if you're ready? And things like that. And these things are common. These things are how people get started. Let's see. So for the prospects that say they have no money, do you suggest helping them go through the funding process? Okay. So I would have to say, you guys, my training in Chicago, I've been working on it for about a week. And my training in Chicago is going to be on transparency. And it's going to be about the reality, I think. And I haven't labeled it yet, but here's what I believe. When people tell me they have no money, the possibility that you're going to run into people all the time that literally have no resources to get started in Renatus is going to be there. So what I mean by that is they don't have the cash or credit. In fact, they may or may not even have a job that's going to take them to where they need to go to pay their bills. If they do, and they're at least working, but they don't have any resources at all. Now, if you think about me, I was 38 years old, so I was an adult. Now I was a business owner before, and I was not living on the street, and I had, but I didn't have any personal resources. My credit was shot. I didn't have a 401k. I had no retirement. I had no assets. I was losing all my assets, which technically they're not even assets, but I could have had a car that was paid off. I didn't have that. I had a few things of value, but I was selling even my watches to pay bills, right? So I had nothing personally, no 401k, no home, no equity, no life insurance, no stocks, no bonds, nothing of value that I could sell, nothing of value that I could leverage. So in theory, I shouldn't have funded. Now, the difference was I have resources. I grew up in a good family. I have always had people that I know that could help me out. I've never been alone in my life in that regard. So when I tried to fund myself and I could not, I was able to finally decide to go after the funding from somebody else and to get help from somebody, which would have been an angel investor in my family. So the answer is that those folks you want to spend time going through the funding with. Now, back then, we didn't have this, you guys. I'm telling you, the opportunity that you guys have now has come tenfold, 100-fold from when we were funding back then, after the crash. And so I did this all on my own. Like, I didn't have a guy sitting there walking me through 15 different ways to fund and then talking about an angel investor and be willing to get on the phone with my family member. I decided on my own after 45 days of trying to get funded on my own and figure this thing out that I had to go get somebody else to help me. But in today's day and age, If somebody has no resources at all, one of the things that you're going to find is to plug them into the events. And the more events that they can come from, their desire is going to increase possibly, and their value for the Renatus education is going to increase possible. Because one thing I do know is, broke or not broke, if people want something bad enough, they will get it, right? And I'm not talking about being homeless, but I'm talking about even people that have no money. If you think about it, they figure out how to go to a professional sports game. They figure out how to go somewhere. They figure out how to do something or buy something. And what I mean by that is, they'll justify it to the point where they'll leverage themselves. They'll borrow, beg, or steal to get it done. And it's typically on a lower scale. Maybe it's a big screen TV. Maybe it's something for their kids. But people are resourceful. They're human. When the value is there, they don't care about their credit or time or leverage or anything like that, or paying things back even for that matter, or how they're going to do it. They're going to figure it out, and they'll go out and get it, and they'll buy it. They'll consume it. We're consumers. And so the more value that you can bring about Renatus. Now, Renatus does not have an instant gratification. You don't buy Renatus and you don't get in there and all of a sudden you're going to purchase it for $2,000 or $8,000 or $20,000 and you're going to have something tangible. There's nothing tangible. There's no return. You have to put in time. It's the beginning that's not going to be recuperated for a little while. So again, not something that human nature allows us to, generally speaking, do. Why do we go get student loans? I'm going to get to the answer to your question, Ahmed, in just a minute. So trust me, this is a great question. Student loans, going to school has no instant gratification other than the fact that we're young and we get to experience school and we get to have all this great time, and we're willing to take out a student loan. A couple of reasons. Number one is we believe truly, based on our long time, 20, 30 years of belief, we've been told that school is the way to go to get a good job. I mean, it's just a fact. Like, we know that if we go to school and we actually turn up a degree, no matter what the grades are, some point we're going to get a job. Number two is the money's free. The money is postponed. We don't have to make a monthly payment. It covers room and board. We can actually get student loans for almost everything, including food. We can basically live for free and go to school. Or we have somebody helping us and supplementing that as well. Right? We might get a job, but then our job can be part-time, and that's just enough to cover a little bit of bills and some food because we have this supplemental school loan. Then we know we don't even have to start paying the school loan for at least 6 months when we're out of college after we get our. So it's very easy for us to get this educational loan, and we don't have that opportunity with Renatus. We know that if we get a loan for Renatus, we have to pay for it immediately. So I'm going to read this real quick. I hear about not having money is not a problem all the time. My argument is, if these educational programs are guaranteed to work because I'm committed and will do the work and put in the time, why isn't it financed like any other education? Okay, so it's interesting is that these educational programs, for number one, Michael, are not guaranteed ever. There's no guarantee. And if you're getting guaranteed by anybody, it's wrong. There's no guarantee written by any regular school, any regular education either. What they do when they market and advertise, which they do, schools market. When you watch a a college football game, they have advertisements about their university and belonging, right? They have orientation. They have recruiters. They have all these people that go out to bring people to their colleges. And what they do is they tell you statistics. If you get a job, if you go to school here, this is the odds of you getting a job. This is how much our first year graduates graduate with. This is what it's going to be like when you're here. And they sell you a story. They sell you on a dream of being a part of that college for those 4 years. So the reason that we are not funded like traditional education, and that we can't go get a student loan, government-funded student loan, is because we are not accredited. We are not a university. We are the opposite of that, okay? Understand something, guys. A university is generally speaking, it's not private. It is public. It is a dynamic money-making machine. It is an unbelievable business that is owned by the state, okay? And we are pumping out student after student, and they are running a business. And the government has over time decided that an accredited university will put people in a position where they're just enough money, they make just enough money to pay back these loans. And if you know about a government loan, a student loan, you can't bankrupt them. You can't even go out of the country and change citizenship. They live with you and they die with you and they pass on to your children. You cannot leave them. You can't do anything with these student loans but pay them back. So it's very interesting the way that this is set up. This is a government set up system that is set in place for centuries to be done this way. That's probably not the most politically correct answer. It's probably not the most truthful answer, meaning that I don't have all the facts behind that question, but you guys get my point. We are not accredited, so they're not going to give us a government-funded loan. We are a trade school. We are a trade education services company. We are a privately held company. We are a private education. We are regulated by different parts of the government and things like that. And so we have to be funded. Now, back to this question. This is very good, Michael. So I'm gonna, and I get what your argument is. So when people, this is so good. When you hear people in Renata say that money's not an issue, like, I'm not worried about the money. I say this to clients all the time, right? I'm not worried about the money. We'll figure out the money later. First of all, we got to make sure that you want to do this. And then people come in and they tell me, I want to do this. And I'm going to give you an example. I had a one-on-one yesterday with a couple of mine, and I've been working with them for over 6 months. And they have already placed their combo, and they were supposed to fund their combo last month. Now they're supposed to fund their combo this month. And they have told me how much they want it, how important it is, and I believe them 100%. I know these folks. They're warm market friends of mine. They want to do this. They're going to do this. Eventually it'll happen. But something came up in their life, and they chose that as a priority over this. Okay. So the point to that is that for the time being, right, that's their choice, is to get this other thing done first. The thing that we have to realize is that when we say money is not an object, it's not an object when it comes to having a desire to do something. It goes right back to what I talked about a little bit earlier when I say that if there's something we want as a human, we will figure out a way to get it. We just do. We know how to get it. We know how to satisfy our deepest desires and our deepest needs. Food, shelter, and clothing for number one, right? And then after that, once we have those things, we begin to look to the things that satisfy us the most and give us the most instant gratification. And we will justify and find a way to make it happen. It's just human nature. When we have something like this and we have a deep enough belief, we will do whatever it takes. We will go against what our family's telling us. We will go against what our finances are telling us, and we will fund the education. And that's what I mean by that. When you hear people say money's not an object, we'll figure it out. If we want something, there's a way for people. They will ask anybody. If you look at Dr. Gary's story, a PAC member, he was in a situation at 65 years old where there's no way, but he wanted this so bad and needed this so bad that he was willing to go through his phone and talk to people that he had counseled and ask them for the opportunity to invest in him to get this education. It's a very great story on how he got funded and what he was able to accomplish. And he went there with conviction. I mean, this is what he was determined to do. And one way or the other, at his age, broke, he was going to find $20,000 plus and not have to pay it back. No payments until after he had made money, right? And that's the way we try to set this thing up. Okay, so let's see. So once again, Anthony's making some comments. I'm going to read them in a second. But Ahmed says, so prospects that say they have no money, do you suggest helping them go through the funding process? I always suggest, no matter who it is, that we walk through the funding options. And most of the time, I don't know if 50% is the right number, but a very, very large number of the people that we're going to be working with are not going to be able to fund in any way, shape, or form from themselves. They're simply going to have one option. And that option, in my experience, is going to be an angel investor. If the value is not there, if they don't understand, and they've never done this before, imagine if they have never borrowed money from family or gone to an angel investor before for anything other than, hey, give me a $500 loan, I can't pay rent, then it's going to be a process. They're not going to know how to do it. You're going to have to help them, right? They're going to have to need it, desire it so badly that they're going to overcome something they've never done before. They can't even envision it. So, I mean, think about that, right? Like, if these folks have no other way, but then they have to fully understand each and every funding resources, what a HELOC is, how much it costs, how do you get one, what it's used for, how it works. Same with a 401k, how that gets paid back, so that they can explain this to somebody that they're going to borrow from, right? Not someone's cash out of their safe or out of their checking account, but if they're going to borrow someone's credit cards, how does that work? What does that look like? How do they make the payments every month to that person? So these are very important things. I mean, they can either figure it out on their own if they're sophisticated enough. And that, what I mean by that is if they're mature enough or they've been around the block long enough, then they can go to some family member or some friend or colleague or work or boss or something and have a conversation about paying that back. Or we're going to have to enlighten them on that, right? Now, I'm always going to walk them through the process, but spending the amount of time with them depends on you. Most of the time, you heard Michael talking about that yesterday. Again, he had a lot of great comments. Let's see, let me make sure I'm not able to miss anything. Well, I'll have to read that. Oh, that's funny. I'm going to read his joke before I finish up. So it's really good. Okay. I was just checking the chats, you guys. Okay. So Michael mentioned this yesterday. Like, it's difficult when we're dealing with broke people. And there's nothing wrong with broke people. Remember, broke is a mindset. Broke is a time frame. Broke is it's not poor. Poor is a state of living, right? Poor is a way of life. Broke is simply a time in people's lives when they're in a situation where they're just, in all resources, they are broke. They don't have resources to help them move forward, including relationships, right? You've got relationships, you've got credit, you've got relationships with the bank, which would be your credit. You've got money, you've got time. So when you're broke, you don't have much time because you're too busy taking care of your family and trying to get a job and working 3 jobs and all these things, right? So all of these, what we would call the normal resources are gone, let alone the money, right? And any money they do get, it's not going to. Now, I've rarely ever heard, if anybody, I don't even know of anybody that, broke or not, has gone with all the desire in the world, had they ever gone out, got a job or got a second job or continue to work their job and then save the money that they made to buy the Renatus education. Maybe at the essentials level, maybe at the UGA level for some lower end products, but most of the time, there's no way. It's a pattern they've been living in forever. How are they all of a sudden going to change it based on their desire, right? It doesn't work that way. Most people, regardless of what they have in their pocket, even the ones that can fund this thing with cash, like write a check for it, they don't. They leverage it. They leverage a credit card. They leverage their 401k. They leverage their HELOC. They leverage their retirement. They leverage their life insurance. They leverage an asset. They borrow against something in order to fund the education, and they don't spend their cash. Their cash in their mind is set for something else. So who, being broke, is ever going to go out and make extra money, right? We have a million other things to pay for, let alone education that is not going to get us anything right away. In fact, it's going to cost us money and not make us money. That's the mindset. And it's going to be a while before we pay it back. There's no way we're going to go and start making extra money when we have all these other bills, or we're in this situation, and then we're going to save that money and not pay off all these things that have an instant gratification, or buy the things we've been waiting on, or take our family on the trip that we wanted to, or help our kids in school, or change clothes, or whatever the things. All of these things, these are far more important and far more humanly nature instant, and have gratification, the minute we do it, we see a result, versus buying the education. The education has to be funded in some sort of way where we can make the payment every month if there is one, but that we know that we don't have to worry about paying that back right away, because we're not going to get anything from the $20,000 we just spent. So it is important, in my opinion, when I answer this question about people that say they have no money, they might not understand off the bat that they don't have any money right away, which means cash. I will absolutely explore the resources with them of other places people get money, and I will tell stories. But when you get through cash, credit, lines of credit, home equity lines of credit, 401ks and IRAs, you get into stocks, bonds, mutual funds, life insurance, and you even move into assets that they may have to sell. If none of those things exist for them, you're left with an angel investor or UGA, right? I mean, that's just a fact. So I will go through all these things so that they can understand that once they go to an angel investor, all of those first 7 to 8 things, they work for angel investors as well. And they have to have the desire. But if they are not seeing this information over and over again, and we're not creating enough value, and they're not coming around, and they've given up because they don't have the money, it's going to be very difficult for them to find the value to actually go out and do it, even when they come into the money. They won't spend it on this. I'm going to read this joke really quick for you. There's a lawyer, accountant, and a real estate investor that lose their jobs. Standing outside the building, it starts to rain. So the 3 grab boxes, and the lawyer looks for the dry ground under the bridge. So the 3 grab boxes, and the lawyer looks for the dry ground under the bridge. The accountant puts his next to him for security, and the real estate investor puts his on top and writes on it. Penthouse for sale in a affluent area with lawyers and accountants. That's funny. I hope everybody got that joke. It's pretty funny. He probably made some money, had a plan, right? Real estate investor makes a plan. So with that, you guys, it's 8:01. I hope this, I apologize in advance and at the end here for, I'm going to write my cell phone in there again, 760-533-3141. I didn't have a great plan set up for today. I was feeling pretty bad yesterday. I went to bed a little early and I literally got up late today, but I actually am feeling better. And I really appreciate you guys being here today. Let's see. I'm doing it all myself with little to no money in the past 4 months, and even wrote a book about all this. I don't know what that means, Michael. I mean, obviously, you're welcome, Lee. I would, Lee, we got to talk today too. Shoot, I didn't call you back yesterday, or I can't remember. Maybe you can call me after this. You guys, if you feel like you're doing this all yourself, it shouldn't be that way. Reach out to your 5-star, reach out to your leadership, and whatever you're doing, whether it's by yourself or not, you know, it shouldn't feel like a burden. It should feel like you want to reframe it, that this in your mind, you're not doing it by yourself. You're doing it for yourself. You're doing it for your friends and family. You're doing it for your future. You're doing it for someone else's future that you're going to change. And we just awesome. I know it's an investment in you. That's great, Michael. And I get it. Unfortunately, all I can say this is never ever learn to quit. If you know, and I mean whether you're in Renatus or you're trying to get to Renatus, if you never ever learn to quit on what it is that you're going for when it comes to Renatus, which is upgrading your education, getting your education, or getting 5-starred or making this work. Most of us are leveraged. Most of us are over leveraged all the time. You guys, when I was broke, I'm over time, but when I was broke in 2008 and 2007, looking at this information, I wasn't just broke. I had broke my own wife, right? Like I had gone on and leveraged her credit and money, thinking I was going to be making more money than I was. And I put us in, so not only was I broke, but I owed so much money and it was ridiculous. So the point is that if we never learn to quit, and you believe this to be the vehicle, then there's a way out. There's an end to this. There's an end to what it is. But most people, unfortunately, you gotta remember that you're inviting to this information are in that same position. They are, now even if they have a good job, they are in a position where they're over leveraged. They've been doing it for a long time in their lives. They have a good job. They've had some ups and downs. They've had time when they have money and they don't have money. But no matter what, that's the cycle. There's a reason that 65-year-olds are broke. The majority of them, 95% of them. So it's very, very important that we realize that, and that otherwise we wouldn't even be having something to offer people. No one would need it. So you're not alone when I say that a lot of us have been there, Michael, as well as most of the people you're going to meet are going to be right where you're at. When you get through what you're getting through and you get to the point where that's not your story anymore, then you're going to be able to help a lot of people that were in your situation based on your story. So keep that in mind. You guys are awesome. It's 8:05. I apologize. Thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for being with me, everybody. I love you guys. It's Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday morning. Make it a great Tuesday. Make it a great day. I'll see everybody tomorrow at the meetings on Wednesday nights. And remember, it's not Wednesday. It's not Thursday this week because of Halloween. And for those of you who are going to be around, I will be in Chicago this weekend, Saturday the 2nd, for Super Saturday. And it's going to be awesome. Thanks, Lisa, for reaching out to Michael. Michael, if you check the chats, Lisa just put her number in there. And everybody, you've got my number, 760-533-3141. I will end the meeting. You guys have a great day. Thanks for being with me today. I'll see you next week. Make it a great Halloween.
Love you.